When it comes to Paul Manafort and also Gates as well, we have some more information coming out of documents that were revealed yesterday. And some of these are odd, some of these are incredibly significant. Here's the significant part. The government wrote in the documents on Tuesday that Manafort and Gates, quote, have connections to Ukrainian and Russian oligarchs who have provided millions of dollars to them. And so when you hear Donald Trump repeatedly claim that there's no Russia in any of that, there's no Russia, well, there is. They apparently got millions of dollars from Russians. Also, despite the fact that Paul Manafort has often denied this, they say in those documents that he has staff working for his corporation in Moscow, something he has never revealed before and in fact has denied. And so that is significant as well. There's a connection for you financially at least.
Yeah. So look, Manafort's in a world of trouble. Every day we find out more of his illicit ties to Russia, which he hid, which is a huge problem because you were supposed to register as a foreign agent, and the reason is so we could know what your motivation is. And he wanted to hide his motivation because he wanted to secretly do propaganda for the Russians. And he hid a lot of things about us, about what he was doing that John's going to tell you about in a sec. And then on top of that, he apparently didn't pay his taxes, laundered money. So he's got a decision to make. That's why Trump is really trying hard to avoid answering the question of whether he's going to pardon him, because he wants Manafort to think, maybe I'll pardon you. And he also wants to keep that in his back pocket in case he really needs to pardon Manafort, because Manafort starts to turn evidence against him.
Yeah, and I mean, it was, I believe, yesterday that he was asked directly at one of these meetings by a reporter, are you going to pardon Paul Manafort? And he said, oh, that's it, thank you. And he refused to answer the question. In fact, he stopped questions from the media in response to that. So it is hardly crazy to think that he might in fact try to pardon Manafort. And considering the amount of evidence that they already seem to have against him about crimes that go back throughout the campaign and for years earlier, the idea that you would pardon this guy, that is a level of brazenness that I would have assumed would even go beyond Donald Trump. But there are others. Both Manafort and Gates are under house arrest. There's a reason for that. The government argued they, quote, pose a risk of flight based on the serious nature of the charges, their history of deceptive and misleading conduct, the potentially significant sentences the defendants face, the strong evidence of guilt, their significant financial resources, and their foreign connections. And they cited multiple foreign connections that they might be able to flee to and then, quote, live comfortably. And so they felt like their passports needed to be taken away so that they would not be able to flee the country and hide off somewhere else, avoiding justice.
John, which passport?
Well, all of them actually. Much like Jason Bourne, they've got a briefcase full of them. So Manafort had 3 US passports, each under a different number. This year, Manafort traveled to Mexico, China, and Ecuador with a phone and email account registered under a fake name. Now, you can actually apparently have 3 passports. It's not strictly speaking a crime. It can be that for certain sorts of consular purposes, you might need a second passport. And there are both private and diplomatic passports. I have no reason to believe that he would have any sort of non-typical passport, but it's possible that that is not one of the areas that he has broken the law. But you do have to love having the fake phone number, the fake name for his phone number and email address. It's almost like this guy thinks that he's some sort of super spy or something. He seems to believe it too because he also has a fondness for the James Bond inspired password Bond 007.
And by the way, for a spy, that is the world's worst password.
Yes.
How easy is that to break?
Yes.
With the world's worst spy.
It hurts me because I really like James Bond. Now he's ruined it a little.
Yeah, well, he's more Dr. Evil than James Bond.
I also have to change my password now.
Well, yeah, he changed his, first it was password, then it was Manafort. He's like, okay, I got it, Bond 007.
Was even like 008. It wasn't like, anyway. But the next one was From Russia with Love.
Oh my God.
Or at least cash. So I remember when we were having the warrantless wiretapping debate, we were on the side of let's not invade innocent Americans' privacy and let's follow the Constitution. Republicans were on the side of, oh, you got nothing to hide and you shouldn't worry about it. If you got nothing to hide, why do you need 3 passports?
And a fake name for your phone number.
There's some chance you had something to hide, but besides which we're past that discussion because we now have indicted him and we have all the evidence of the things he had to hide, including tens of millions of dollars of payments from Russian oligarchs, and all of his illicit dealings that he was desperate to hide and launder.
Yeah, and I'm glad that you brought up the money, because I'm not going to go through all the numbers because there's a lot of them, but there is some very bizarre behavior when it comes to his net worth and also Gates, but I'm a little bit less interested in Gates. So his net worth apparently fluctuates maybe in the same way that Donald Trump's is. Donald Trump says that his net worth in part depends on his mood. That's from official financial documents.
That's true, I forgot that, that's hilarious.
Yeah, and so from 1 month to a couple months later, at different points, Manafort disclosed his net worth as around like the mid-20s in millions, all the way up to $130 million, and back down again just in a couple months. Now maybe this guy is just a crazy gambler. And he, sometimes he gets high and sometimes he gets low, or sometimes he lies on financial disclosure forms. Even inside of 1 month, just a couple of weeks apart, his income went from the mid-20s to the mid-60s on financial like loan applications and things like that in the same month. And I believe it's Gates who applied for 50 different bank accounts inside of 1 month at one point. This is a lot of shady activity. And best case scenario, I think at this point, this is purely personal financial crimes, that this is criminal behavior where they attempted to enrich themselves and there are no policy implications, no political implications. But I don't understand why this guy would be so dead set on being involved in Donald Trump's presidential campaign if he's got this amazing racket set up that he's been operating for a number of years. Why is it that he needs to get involved with Donald Trump's campaign? And that's where the non-best case scenario gets involved. And don't forget that this is the guy when he was in charge of Donald Trump's RNC strategy who got them to change the part of their platform that had to do with Ukraine. And so that's a possible reason why he's getting these huge sums of money all at once.
Yeah, and as I explained earlier in the week, he took $19 million from a Russian oligarch and didn't pay it back and didn't do what he said he was going to do. And then in some of the emails that we found out in the indictment, it was mentioned that this was a good way to get even with the Russian oligarchs.
Yeah.
And
well, maybe that's why he was traveling under a fake name. He was worried about like relaxing on a beach and drinking a polonium colada.
Yeah, and so this would make them whole. And if Manafort could deliver certain goodies for the Russian government, then maybe they're not going to want their $19 million back. Okay.
But that can't involve Donald Trump because he just met Manafort several decades ago. And Manafort lives in his building.
And this is very important. The guy, Rick Gates, with all the shady stuff that John just explained, Manafort's top aide, until Monday, he was employed by one of Donald Trump's best friends, Thomas Barack Jr. And he was employed as part of his real estate company. Rick Gates doesn't know anything about real estate and has never worked in real estate.
I think these guys are shady.
You think maybe it's just a coincidence that one of Donald Trump's best friends hired Gates, who was just indicted, at a really high salary to work on something that he knows nothing about? And you think that Trump and Gates and Manafort are not connected?
That sounds like how Trump forms his cabinet.
And so finally, look, back to the pardon for a second. The reason Trump walks out without answering the pardon question is, if he says, I'm considering pardoning this guy who's connected to me, it seems to be a clear obstruction of justice. Saying, I am going to help this guy get off the hook so that I don't have to face criminal justice. And there's an excellent case to be made for obstruction of justice if Trump says that. If he says, I definitely won't pardon him, well, then Manafort thinks, well, I got nothing left. I might as well turn evidence against him. Otherwise, I'm going to potentially go to prison for decades, right? So that's why, under no circumstances, does Donald Trump want to answer that question. By not answering the question, he's basically winking to Manafort. Remember, it's still possible. And we have a petition about this, tytnetwork.com/pardon. If he pardons anyone related to this investigation, he should be immediately impeached. It's the most clear obstruction of justice you can have, and if you let him get away with it, he'll pardon everyone, including himself, and just keep being dictator. Watch the Young Turks commercial-free, download it or stream it, watch it any way you like at tytnetwork.com/join.